welcome to another edition of 2A Arsenal Roundup News. My name is Richard Espinoza, and I'm your host. 2A Arsenal Roundup News is your primary source for Second Amendment news. Whether it be good, bad, or ugly, whether it be in blue states or red states, we keep you informed on what is going on with your Second Amendment rights. And today I also want to give a little shout out to the Arizona Citizens Defense League. I am proud to say I am now a proud member of the Arizona Citizens Defense League, and I'm looking forward to be working with the Arizona Citizens Defense League in volunteer work and working together to fight for Second Amendment rights and keep Arizona a prosperity freedom state. That is my goal, and that is my vision, to be working with the Arizona Citizens Defense League to keep freedom alive and well and make sure that the Second Amendment will always be protected here in the great state of Arizona. Well, today, people, I'm going to be talking about the governor's race in California, my former state of California. I was born and raised in California all my life, and I can tell you everything that goes on in that state from top and bottom. You know, I lived in a time when California was a great state. I lived in a time when you had freedom, you had prosperity, and we lived a simple way of life in California at one time. But that all changed towards the end of the 1980s. A lot of our gun rights have been ruined through then California Governor George Duke Majan, then of course Pete Wilson, who was no friend of the Second Amendment, a rhino Republican, and then of course you had Gray Davis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all the way up to Jerry Brown and now to Gavin Newson. Our Second Amendment rights in California has been horrible and not been respected with honor. It's people like Rob Bonta, the Attorney General of California, has done even further damage to our Second Amendment rights. But now California is now in an election season. It's a primary election. We're going to be talking about each candidate. The two main candidates for the Republican Party, as you all know, is San Bernardino Sheriff Chad Bianco, and of course businessman and TV entrepreneur Steve Hilton. Let me say that each one of them has their flaws, and each one of them may say they're pro-gun, but the question is, are they really? But let's compare. This was brought to my attention by the California Rifle and Pistol Association as it relates to Steve Hilton. Now, Steve Hilton has bragged on Facebook that he has an A rating from the California Rifle and Pistol Association. However, California Rifle and Pistol Association Representative Julie Zillier has said otherwise. I'm going to be playing you a clip of an interview from Julie Zillier, and she will talk about how Steve Hilton lied and how he pretended to be a friend of gun owners when he refused to answer some questionnaires. He got a C rating and he wasn't too happy about it. Then he got a B rating. He wasn't happy about it. But when he did get an A rating, he dropped back to a C after he made a despicable ad against Chad Bianco with a bullseye, which turned the California Rifle Pistol Association away from him. But long before that, they already made up their mind that they were going to endorse Sheriff Chad Bianco. Now, to be fair, Chad Bianco does have his flaws. Though it may be true on record that Chad Bianco might have an outstanding pro-gun record, but then again, that could all change if he became governor. But here's the other flaw. There has been word that Chad Bianco has kneeled with Black Lives Matter and that he wants to give pathway citizenship to illegal immigrants. In other words, his goal is to the ones that are here illegally right now get their citizenship, but after that, the ones that try to sneak in will be deported. That shouldn't be that way, because you have many legalized immigrants who've been waiting in line for so long, and it's like they're cutting in front of them. And not only that, illegal immigration can also affect our Second Amendment rights. You have many illegal immigrants who are not educated on the Constitution, number one. And number two, they want to vote Democrat because they're the ones who are going to protect them. In other words, you have an illegal alien who has a criminal record, and we all know that the Democrats are going to protect them. Then they'll be the ones that will use a gun in a crime, and then the Democrats want to blame it on the law-abiding gun owner. So I'm going to play you a clip, an interview from Julie Zillier, and then you will decide. And I also will be playing a clip from Chad Bianco, and then it will be up to you to decide, where do you agree? Where do you believe, who's telling the truth and why? But I'm going to break it down to you afterwards, what the Republican Party's game plan is and what the Democrat game plan is as it relates to the midterm elections. They both know that the Second Amendment is going to be a big issue because they know that gun owners vote. So I'm going to break it down to you, but for right now, I want you to listen to a clip to Julie Zillier, and she will explain how she gave a low rating to Steve Hilton and why.
His affiliation and rating from the California Rifle Pistol Association. I have so much respect for the Marin president of the CRPA, Miss Julie. She is going to break it down for y'all, so please listen to what she has to say. It's very important. What else did you tell me? I think I saw you post Steve Hilton's rating with the CRPA. What is it?
Oh, that's a fun one. So originally, Steve Hilton was approached by 7 different members of CRPA to fill out our questionnaire. He refused every single time. He did not fill out the questionnaire until after Chad Bianco had already received the endorsement from CRPA. Then he filled out the questionnaire and he got a C. Well, as time went by, he wanted to appeal to the gun community of California, and then he got regraded to a B, and then he didn't like that grade, so he did it again, got an A, and then he released a mailer with Chad's head in a bullseye target. The organization of CRPA wrote out to the Hilton campaign that they were going to be regraded based on that flyer. The Hilton campaign did send an email back to CRPA taking account that that in fact was their flyer and there was no excuse. So currently, Steve Hilton now has a C graded from CRPA. Additionally, gun owners of California do not want to even accept Steve Hilton's answer to their questionnaire. They will not even grade him for his conduct.
Wow, I didn't know the whole backstory, girl. So Miss Julie here, she puts in like a...
Can't handle anything for illegal immigration. That's a federal government's responsibility. And we are allowing these arguments and these one-offs and the emotions to completely cloud our judgment. Sanctuary state absolutely has to be removed. It is harming California. It is harming everyone except for criminals. So the love affair of California legislature has given us SB 54, which is sanctuary state. It has to go. I'm suing the state to get rid of it. It is unconstitutional. We're either going to win our case or I'm going to be elected as your governor and we're removing it. But the people who are in our jail, I have to be able to turn them over to immigration because instead, state law forces me to release them back out into public to victimize you. And that absolutely has to end. We've been lied to about sanctuary state policy because it's emotional. And you get nothing but the truth from me as your governor. And we're going to finally start working for Californians instead of special. Okay, so we cooperate with ICE on a...
Okay, now you've heard both sides. Now it's up to you to decide. The way I see it is this. In all my years of living in California, and I'm speaking about, living in California for as long as I have, all my life, I point most of the blame to the California Republican Party, and here's why. In the last 20 years, the California Republican candidates were not any good. And a large amount of it is that the California Republican Party is not supporting the conservative candidates. They want to support the liberal light Republican candidate, because that California is a Democrat state, unfortunately. It is a blue state. And the California Republican Party's goal is to get both Democrat voters and independent voters to vote for the Republican Party who support their views, even if it means to be liberal light. And if you go back in the past years, okay, we'll start off with George Duke Major. George Duke Major was a rhino Republican. He wasn't any good. He was no friend of the Second Amendment. In fact, ever since that incident that happened in Stockton, California back in 1989, he pushed for further gun restrictions. Then you had Pete Wilson. Pete Wilson was no friend of the Second Amendment. He had two anti-gun attorney generals. One of them was Dan Lundgren, who was a Republican, and of course, Bill Locklear. And then from there, you had Gray Davis, who was recalled, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who pretended to be a conservative, but he's not. We all know that he's married to the Kennedys, so therefore he's a Democrat in disguise. And then after that, you had Jerry Moonbeam Brown for a second time. He was the first governor to serve 3 terms. The first California governor to serve 3 terms. Because when he ran for office the first time, they didn't have any term limits. For whatever reason, Brown decided not to run a second term back in the late 70s, early 80s. And then from there, after Jerry Brown, Brown came back again and ran 2 terms. And he was also responsible for the problems that California was having long before Gavin Newsom. And I'm also going to hold Gavin Newsom accountable as well, because he was also Jerry Brown's lieutenant governor as well. We all know that Gavin Newsom has taken kickbacks. But if you also look in the past, the recent Republican candidates, we're going to go from the worst to the really worst. First, you had, Meg Whitman, who ran for governor of California, who was the CEO of eBay. She was a joke. And then from there, you had what was known as a Obama Republican, Neil Kashkari. And there was a reason why Neil Kashkari was known as Barack Obama's favorite Republican. Well, he was no different and no better than Jerry Brown. In fact, in 2014, both the Republican Party of California and the California Democrat Party, they both worked together to eliminate the independent voters off the ballot. So back in 2014, you only had a choice. You either had to vote for Neil Kashkari or you had to vote for Jerry Brown. I voted for neither. I wanted to vote for the Libertarian candidate, but it wasn't on the ballot. And that's what's going on in California, is that they're taking away voter choice. People should have a right to vote. If they're not happy with the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate, they should vote for either the Libertarian, the Independent, the Liberty Party candidate, or the Green Party candidate, which is actually the second Democrat party I call. It's more of a Democrat party in disguise, the Green Party. But they're just a bunch of environmental, radical, leftist environmentalists. That's just to put it that way. And one of the key figures of that party was Jane Stein. And of course, Ralph Nader. But putting that aside, voter choices are now eliminated in California. So you only have to vote, you have the choice of voting for the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate. People should have a right to vote for a third candidate, but California is not given that option. So with that being said, you have nothing but lousy choices. Then after Neil Kashkari, you had John Cox, who wasn't a true conservative. Travis Allen, who was very conservative, was thrown under the bus. And there were many other candidates from the Republican side who were simply no good. And that's why I blame it on the Republican Party of California, because they support more of the liberal Republicans, the Rhino Republicans, than they do the conservatives. So you can even ask Chuck Gavor that one. Chuck Gavor, who was a former state senator of California, left California and moved to Texas because he was fed up with the Republican Party of California throwing him under the bus. But I'm going to break it down to you, and I'm going to discuss to you what the Republican Party's game plan is, the California Republican Party's game plan, and what the Democrats' game plan is. So I'm going to read it off to you, and you can look on the screen. Here's their plans. Republican game plan is this: get gun owners to vote, accommodate Democrat voters, be conservative on one issue, be liberal on one issue. That's how the Rhino Republicans are playing the game. And that's the kind of people that the Democrat Party the Republican Party wants to support, because they're more concerned about winning election than doing what is right for the state. You follow me on this? Because they care more about winning. They figure the only way they can get a Republican candidate in California is to appease some things to the left-leaning voters as well as the independent voters. They believe in compromising. As a stout supporter of the Second Amendment, I don't compromise. I don't believe in gun control light. It's either the Second Amendment or nothing. That's where I stand on that. Now we're going to go to the Democrats' game plan. The Democrats' game plan is this: encourage gun owners not to vote. Get non-gun owners to vote. So get supporters of gun control to vote. Try to convince gun owners that sensible gun laws are reasonable and will not strip your Second Amendment rights. That's what they're trying to get you to believe. They're trying to get you to believe that. Well, we all know that that's a bunch of hogwash. And when a Democrat candidate talks about sensible gun laws, what they're really saying is that they really want to take your guns away. And they say, oh no, we just want you to see that sensible gun laws, that sensible gun laws are reasonable, and therefore it's not going to strip you against your Second Amendment rights. We just want sensible gun laws. Again, it's sugar-coated as saying we're going to take your guns away. And that's why I've confronted these candidates before. Say, don't tell me you're for this gun or that gun. You're for my Second Amendment rights or you're not. Stop BSing me. Tell me the truth where you stand. And the Democrats know that the Second Amendment is going to be a major factor in the elections. So again, of course, they're going to backpedal. They're going to stutter. And they're going to reword what they said. Even when they get caught in a lie, they say, well, I really didn't mean it that way. What I really meant was this. That is why we have to be informed and be aware on who we vote for. We have to be careful. Because again, they pretend to be something they are not. You see, that's how it works with the California elections. See, every year when you have the midterm elections in California, it's always the Republican Party of California that wants to support the Rhino Republicans, but never support the real candidate. Now again, Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton both have their flaws. Is Chad Bianco really pro-gun? Well, so far, the way I see it, he is. But then again, that could change when he becomes governor. Sometimes you've had people who've betrayed gun owners. You've had many Republicans in the past, and I'm being honest, that there have been many Republicans who say that they're pro-gun, but then once they get elected, they betray gun owners. They do that simply just to get in. Their main goal is to simply win the election at any cost. That's what they're doing. Is Chad Bianco that way? We'll find out. But as I see it right now, there's no good candidates in California, neither on the Republican side and definitely not on the Democrat side. However, it will be scary if Tom Steyer gets the Democrat nomination. If you know about Tom Steyer, I like to call him the Dick Smooch. Tom Steyer is a radical leftist, ultra anti-gun billionaire. And he definitely will keep California the same way Gavin Newson has left it. So there would be no major changes if Tom Steyer became the next governor of California, God forbid. But if it went down, let's say, between Steve Hilton or Tom Steyer or Chad Bianco or Tom Steyer or whoever representing the Democrat Party, we just got to be careful. But the main thing we have to remember is we got to hold them accountable. Now, if Chad Bianco says that he is going to defend and protect your Second Amendment rights, you hold him to that. So the people of California, if Chad Bianco says to you that he's going to defend and protect your Second Amendment rights, you have to hold him accountable. Don't just take his word for it. You got to hold him accountable. Accountability is everything. Because again, politicians simply cannot be trusted. Trust neither one of them. And you can never hate politicians enough. As a freedom-loving American, you can never hate them enough because usually politicians represent tyranny. But then again, there are some candidates who've given up everything they've had just to run for office. And one of my best examples is, and I mentioned him before, Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde. Andrew Clyde owned his own gun shop in Georgia. He's been a gun shop owner for many, many years. Because he dealt with the abuse from the ATF, he decided to take action and run for office. He left his gun shop business to his two sons to run. They're running the business for him as he's in office. But Andrew Clyde is a perfect example that he's not in it for the money, he's not in it for the fame and glory, but he's in it because he cares about America and he wants to keep America free and make sure that the flag continues to fly and that our constitutional rights will be respected the way that our forefathers have written it through the Constitution. Our constitutional rights don't come from man, but come from God and God Almighty himself. And the Founding Fathers made it clear that our rights come from God and God himself. And therefore, we will continue our fight with for the Founding Fathers and make sure that everything they didn't die in vain. Because if we don't do anything about it, and we don't fight, or you and I don't speak up, then we're just letting the Founding Fathers down. They sacrificed everything, their fortune, their property, everything, so that we could remain free. And some of them, our Founding Fathers, even died broke. So it's up to you, California. Who do you trust? Please like and subscribe to my videos. And give me your opinion. If you're from California, give me your opinion. Who do you trust? Do you trust Steve Hilton or do you trust Chad Bianco? Do you honestly think that Chad Bianco will be a great governor? But I will give you one flaw that Chad Bianco does have. There has been speculations that Chad Bianco has kneeled with Black Lives Matter, and as been mentioned before, it's been said that he wants to give amnesty to the illegals, the ones that are in California illegally, give them citizenship, but after that, shut the door on immigration. It shouldn't be that way because, again, you have legalized immigrants waiting in line, some of whom have been waiting in line for 20 to 30 to up to 35 years, if not more. But yet, ones that break the law get cut in front of them, and that's not right. So it's up to you, California. Who do you trust? Now, let's say if it narrows down to Chad Bianco and the Democrat candidate, or Steve Hilton and the Democrat candidate, and let's say the Republican side did win, you gotta hold them accountable. Just because they say they're pro-gun doesn't mean you take their word for it. You gotta watch every move they make, and you gotta hold them accountable. As I mentioned, accountability is everything. So it's up to you, California. Who do you trust? Steve Hilton, or do you trust Chad Bianco? We'll let you answer that question. Please comment down below and give me your thoughts. And if you have any important legislative news that you want to keep me informed on, please send me an email at rjespinoza, that's rj Espinoza, ESPINOZA .roundupnews@gmail.com. Tell me what the legislation is about. Tell me if it will affect your gun rights. Will it benefit your gun rights? And you can leave your name anonymous if you choose. If you want me to mention your name, I will. And if you don't, that's fine. But just tell me what state you're from and what this legislative bill is all about, so I can get the word for it. And again, another shout out to the Arizona Citizens Defense League. I'm looking forward to working with you and partnering with you and doing volunteer work with you. I'm looking forward to joining the fight with you. And one of my goals is to make sure Arizona stays free. You know, and it's just sad, though, unfortunately, that some people have to leave their states just to be free. You know, I lived in California all my life as a kid, and I always will remember, cherish the golden days of California when I lived there. I lived the California dream at one time, but now it's turned into a nightmare. But it will be up to the California voters to fix things, if they can. But unfortunately, some people are being discouraged not to vote in California because they're afraid of being rigged. But whatever the case may be, we gotta vote. No matter what the situation we're in or what we have to go up against, we have to vote. Because if you don't vote, then you're your own worst enemy. I'm looking forward this November in pushing for Andy Biggs to be the next governor of the great state of Arizona. And hopefully we will vote out cartel Katie Hobbs. Katie Hobbs needs to go, because if she gets a second term, God knows what will happen next. She might show her true colors. And then it could lead the pathway of Senator Mark Kelly to be the future governor of Arizona. We don't want that. So it's important that all the people in Arizona, to all the Arizonans out there, let's push for Andy Biggs to get into the Phoenix Mansion, because we need him in. We need to vote out Katie Hobbs. Well, that is it for 2A Arsenal Roundup News. Stay armed, stay vigilant, carry a firearm wherever you go, because remember, it's your constitutional right. It's not about guns, it's all about freedom. Enjoy the rest of your day, my fellow Americans.